All right, so we have people join. We might have a few more join throughout the session, but why don't we just get started and I can just run through some introductions. So hi everyone, thank you for joining the webinar today. My name is Tamar. I spoke to many of you over the phone over the last couple of weeks, so hello, and also may the 4th be with you. Coincidentally, today is also World Password Day, which is super fitting for today's Bitwarden webinar. So as promised, we will be going over Bitwarden, an open source end-to-end encrypted password management solution. We actually use them internally and we love the product and we're super excited to be partnering with the team. So today we are joined by John, Sai, and Ryan from the Bitwarden team, and they will be going over what they have to offer. So just in a quick snapshot, that includes end-to-end encryption of all Vault data, seamless integration with existing SO and directory services, powerful management tools for efficient password management, flexible deployment options for cloud or self-hosted environments, along with much more. So should any of you have any questions at any point in the demo, please feel free to raise your hand or pipe up. This will be just an open discussion and all questions are very welcome. Yeah, so once again, thank you so much for joining and I hope you all enjoy. So on to the Bitwarden team.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much. Like Tamar said, my name is Sai. I'm the technical training manager here at Bitwarden, and I'll be taking us through the demo today. But like she said, feel free, speak up, use the chat. We've got both John and Ryan here, so happy to answer any questions you may have as we go along. So let me go ahead and get my screen shared here. All right. So I always like to start off with what Bitwarden's mission is here. So we want to empower you and your teams and organizations to access, store, and share your sensitive data easily and securely. We're going to go over a team member overview, so kind of what the end user experience is, talk about some of the tools available to you as an admin, and then open things up for any final questions or close out with Tamar. All right, so why bother using a password manager? So we all know how hard it can be to remember strong, unique passwords for all the various sites we have today. So using a password manager is going to increase that security while eliminating the possibility of forgetting those passwords. Now, Bitwarden is available on all of your clients. You can access your sensitive data from anywhere, whether you want to use our desktop app on Mac, Linux, or Windows. Take advantage of the browser extension. That's one of the most popular ways that people like to use Bitwarden. We have it for mobile as well for your iOS devices, as well as Android and F-Droid. The Bitwarden Web Vault, if you don't like installing anything at all, and then command line as well if you're one of those power users or if you've got a team that loves to script. So some of the benefits of having open source security is that with that public code base, we are subject to extensive third-party auditing with having protected code branches, as well as our partnership with security researchers. We also offer the ability to self-host, as well as access to RESTful APIs or that command line automation. So not only are we being audited by, official, third-party companies, anyone can take a look and see for themselves. So like I said, the Bitwarden browser extension is one of the most common ways that people will take advantage of the Bitwarden password manager. So one thing that we always recommend is that when you are going to install the Bitwarden browser extension, as you can see up here, you'll always want Bitwarden to be your default. So we recommend disabling your built-in password manager. So whether you're using Firefox or Chrome or whatever browser you may have, it's very common that your browser will have a built-in password manager. So you'll just want to make sure to disable that if you're taking advantage of the browser extension, to make sure that Bitwarden is always saving your logins as well as filling them for you. We also recommend pinning it to your toolbar. As we go through some of the other pieces of this demo, you'll see me click on that browser extension and navigate around. So we just want to reduce the amount of clicks that you have to have and make sure that you have easy access to Bitwarden all the time. Now, you may have noticed as I was clicking around with that browser extension that it disappeared if I clicked elsewhere. You can make a persistent experience either by clicking on this little icon in the top left, which will pop out Bitwarden into a brand new browser window, or depending on which browser you're using, it's dependent on the browser. You can use Bitwarden as a sidebar, which will allow you to navigate around, do anything you like, but it'll always have this persistent experience right there. So it's really up to your preferences. All right. So when you go through the process of creating your account, you'll probably be going through Tamar or one of her colleagues. But one thing you'll want to make sure that you know how to do is creating your master password. So your master password is what's going to give you access into your Bitwarden vaults, and it needs to be something that is both strong and unique. So when you are setting this up, if you need some help, we have a password generator tool. So in the footer of all of our bitwarden.com pages, we have this password generator tool that you can use to create a password or passphrase with any of your specifications. And this doesn't require a login at all. So you can use this to create that initial master password. Something to know about this master password is that because of Bitwarden's zero knowledge encryption, we cannot reset this master password for you. But if you are the one who's setting up the Bitwarden organization for your team, you can enable master password reset, which would allow you as the owner of your account to reset the master passwords of your users. So Bitwarden will not be able to do that, but you can set that up for your team if that's something that you'd like to be able to offer. I think I saw a question here. So does master password also have 2FA? So during the sign up process, we don't have a way to enable 2FA right there, but once you have created your account, you can absolutely set up 2FA on your account. Also, if you do choose to enable a single sign-on, so if you have an identity provider like Active Directory or Google Workspace, something like that, you can also take advantage of the 2FA options there. That's a little bit more setup in the beginning, but absolutely something you can take advantage of. All right, so I've used the term vault. What does that mean? So Bitwarden stores all your sensitive data as what we call item types. So there's 4 pre-built item types available to you. We have logins, which you can think of as your typical username and password. You can also store additional information beyond just those. So if your login also requires an account ID in addition to a username, you can store that as well. We can store card information, so your debit or credit cards, identity information, so anything about a person, think a mailing address, a phone number, all of that, and it is HIPAA compliant. And you could also store secure notes, which is any kind of plain text that you just want to make sure it gets stored securely. So those item types will then be stored in one of two places. You'll have My Vault. So that is an individual vault that's owned by your account. So it's associated with your, Bob at bitwarden.com or what have you. And that vault is just for you. So you could store things like your own company email address login, maybe a time card information, things that are still relevant to that work or business use, but you don't intend to share with anyone else at the company. Then on the other side, you have your organization vault. So that's a vault that's going to be shared with you, but it's owned by that, but it's owned and managed by that team or company. So this is what you'll use for sharing purposes. And the function that we use in order to share with others are called collections. So you can think of collections kind of like shared folders. So they are used by a company or an organization to allow that sharing functionality. And typically, people will name these after departments or areas of responsibility. These should be named something that should be really obvious to your day-to-day users of who would be getting access to these collections, as when they save new things to their Bitwarden account, they'll need to select who they're sharing it with. So which collections are they placing that new item in? Another note there is just that collections are also part of the way that permissions are provided. So if you're the first user or if you're an admin of the account, you may see more collections available to you based on your role or responsibilities with the company. So for example, somebody in marketing might not see the same information as someone who's in HR or finance. With Bitwarden, you can also personalize your view. So if you think about your browser, you could also set favorites as well as folders within your Bitwarden account. So that'll allow you to arrange Bitwarden however you like based on your most commonly used items or things that make sense to you. So I'll just show a quick example here in that browser extension. If I go over to my Vault view, anything I set as a favorite will be right up here at the top. And then I have my folders, which I can use to arrange things in a way that makes sense to me. Whereas collections are going to be managed by my company or my admins. So these are things that, hey, every day I need to check the things within these folders. That means I need to go and sign in. It's only relevant for me. It's not visible to anyone else at the company. Another call out is, if you remember earlier, I mentioned that My Vault or that individual vault is going to be associated with the email address that you signed up with. So typically that's going to be your company email. And we have two different plans for business. We have a Teams plan and an enterprise plan. With an enterprise plan, all of your users will also be able to redeem a complimentary families plan, which means that they can enter their personal email and get access to all of the Bitwarden premium features for themselves and up to 5 other people through a families plan sponsorship. So that's also a great thing you can offer to your employees. We really want to make sure that your users are staying safe and secure, not only at work, but also at home. And to that end, account switching can be used. You can, both our mobile app and desktop clients support account switching right now, so switching between that personal and business account. And with the Bitwarden browser extension, that is something that is still in the works, but we recommend you can use things like browser profiles in Chrome, or just using different web browsers based on, using one for personal things and one for business. All right. So using Bitwarden in your day-to-day. So we make it really easy to import your data into Bitwarden. And I'll actually pop right in 1 second to log back in here. We make it really easy to bring your data over into Bitwarden. So you can import data from a huge variety of previous solutions. So whether you were using a whole password manager solution, or just using that built-in, password manager from your browser, we not only allow the import, but we give you instructions right from the get-go to help you get all that data right into Bitwarden. So no need to, manually copy and paste anything. The import process is very straightforward. See, Clayton, if a Google Doc turns a CSV to an XLS, will it fail? So we allow imports as CSV or JSON. So you would need to export that as a CSV in order to import it. So those are the two main ones. I don't believe, Ryan, is there anything specific on XLS?
No, I don't believe XLS is an imported format, but using Excel should be really easy to go from XLS to CSV. It's just a different file type you save it as.
Yeah, I know CSV and JSON, you can import your own. So even if you aren't coming from one of these specific ones, like I know 1Password has its own file extension type here, CSV and JSON are always going to be allowed to import. All right. So we also allow searching from any of those different Bitwarden apps. So not only, if you notice actually right up here, because I'm using a Google Slides, I already see some matching that is being found here based on the tab I'm currently on. But you can also search your vault from any of those apps and find what you're looking for. So even if I'm looking for my Adobe login, even though I'm not on that page, I can get to that information easily. We also have lots of different options for autofill. So if I'm going to, for example, github.com, and I go to my sign-in page, I have 4 different ways that I can autofill here. So I can come up to my browser extension, click on the one that I like, and get that autofilled. I can use the keyboard shortcut. So depending on if you're on a Mac or a PC, either Control or Command Shift L for login. And I can hit that again to cycle through any other matching logins I may have. I can right-click in the field and go to Bitwarden and choose to autofill. Oh, I realize you guys can't see that. Let me try and reshare.
And just while we're waiting for Sai to reshare a screen, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear from the crowd if you are currently using a password manager, if there's any kind of solution that you guys are leveraging today within your organization. If there's any questions that you have about maybe converting over to Bitwarden around that. So feel free to drop those in the chat.
Yeah. So sorry about that. I'm not sure why it doesn't want to share my specific screen there. But if you right click, you can view a context menu that'll allow you to select Bitwarden and choose autofill. The last way is that from the Bitwarden browser extension, you can also go into your settings and turn on autofill on page load. So that is a setting that's off by default. But what that means is the next time I go to a page, it's going to automatically remember the last login that I tried to fill on this site and fill that in for me. So it makes it super convenient to get signed in. Now, in addition, so you may have noticed when I looked at a particular login, Bitwarden can also store and generate your TOTP codes for you. It can also fill those as part of the autofill process. So if I were to go ahead and click on this particular login, go through my sign-in process, all I have to do is paste, so Control V in my case, and it's copied over my TOTP code and I'm in. So if you're sharing accounts between different members of your team, but still want to use those TOTP codes, it's a great option to store those securely. On the other side, so if you've already imported data and maybe you want to create a brand new login, so one you don't have before, and let me log out here really quick. You can either go through the sign up process to create an account, or you can take advantage of this create new item button up here in the top right. I like to do this from the browser extension because it's going to autofill the name, so the name of the site you're on, as well as the URI here. So Bitwarden can match this login to where you are based on a URL. It can also do that based on an IP address or any other form of URI, so not just your websites. You can then either enter in a username you'd like or let Bitwarden generate one for you. If you don't like it, you can hit the regenerate. Sure, imprecise. You can also have it generate your passwords. And you'll notice that in this case, my company has put in a policy that specified certain minimums for me. So with an enterprise plan, I can specify for my users, all passwords moving forward must be at least 16 characters and must have these particular characters included. So it's up to you. You don't have to choose 16, but you can specify whatever makes sense for your company.
Yeah, and Sai, if I can just chime in really quick.
Yeah, please.
When we think about, rethinking about how we manage our passwords, it's really important that when you're creating a new login item or setting up a new account, that you're leveraging Bitwarden to generate that password for you. So rather than relying on us valuable humans to usually figure out something that's really repetitive, leveraging Bitwarden to create that password so that, that strenuousness is not put on the end user. All they have to then remember moving forward is their master password.
Yeah, absolutely. So just kind of continuing down the line here, that TOTP code, I can either enter in the alphanumeric authenticator key or secret, or if I'm using the Bitwarden mobile app, if you've ever scanned one of those QR codes before, that's exactly the same thing that you can do taking advantage of your phone's camera if you're using the Bitwarden mobile app. I can then arrange this item with my folders. require my master password to be re-entered if it's maybe a sensitive login, add notes, and I can also add in a custom field. So this is what we'd use if you remember my example before, if you have additional information beyond just a username and password. So an account ID, a server name, anything like that that needs to be entered as well here. And then last but not least, I have to decide who's going to own this item. So if you remember, is it going to be stored in my vault or in my organization vault? So if I choose my email address, that'll show up within my vault. Or if I choose my organization vault, in this case, my enterprise demo, I'll also need to select which of the collections that I have access to am I going to store it in. So am I giving this item to my, my CRM team or department and my development team, maybe finance, who all needs to have access to this? Once I hit save, I'll be able to see that new one here. And without needing to perform any other actions, I've already got it over in my web vault. So it's effortless syncing across all of your different devices. We already touched on those URIs and the Bitwarden Authenticator. So another thing is that with Bitwarden, once you have logged in for the first time, you will have some options available to you to choose what your vault timeout settings are. So vault timeout, you can think of kind of like your desktop browser, or I'm sorry, your desktop lock. So how long is my vault going to remain open without some kind of action required? Depending on where you're at, or rather which client you're using, I'll have some different options available to me depending on if I'm using the browser or the mobile app, things like that. And I'll also have some standardized time-based options. I'll also be able to choose my vault timeout action. So either lock, which means that I'll be able to take advantage of some of my other unlock options. You'll notice down below, unlock with PIN, so I can set an alphanumeric PIN or biometrics. I love using biometrics on my phone. That quick thumbprint gets you right back in. Or I can choose log out to be that action, in which case I'll always have to re-enter my full master password and any 2FA that I have set up as well. Now, we touched on collections being the function of Bitwarden that allows you to share internally. But we also have Bitwarden Send, which allows you to share text or files with other users outside your organization. So this will provide you a lot of different options, and I'll show you here from the Web Vault. So from creating a new send, you'll be able to give that send a name, choose whatever file or text you want to be sharing, and you'll have a lot of different options to adjust the security and storage of this data. So how long it'll be available to you, how long it's available to others, and you can also set maximum access counts or even set a password for this particular data. Now, this password doesn't require the other user to have a Bitwarden account, just that they know whatever value you've entered here in this password field. Ben, yes, there are some options to restrict send through your through enterprise policies. All right. The last thing from kind of an end user perspective here is the Vault health reports that we provide. So all users have access to 6 Vault health reports that will be able to evaluate how healthy is your vault. So everything from being able to check your passwords or your usernames against known data breaches to ensure that any of those accounts are being addressed right away. Identifying any reused passwords or weak passwords, particularly if you've imported from another solution. I think we've all been slapped on the hand at one point in our life for repeating a password. We want to make sure that now that we have Bitwarden remembering those passwords for us, that we're always having unique and strong passwords. We also have an unsecure websites and inactive two-step login report just to encourage you and your users to really follow those best practices online. All right, so now we'll hop over more into that admin overview. So policies, we talked about those before, and I will hop back into the Web Vault. So admins are going to do most of their functions here in the Web Vault under this Organizations tab. And one of the first things that you'll want to make sure you do is, if you have an enterprise organization, is set up these enterprise policies. This is where you can set up that master password reset policy, as well as specify things like your master password requirements or the requirements for that password generator when they're creating new passwords moving forward. So this is what was governing that minimum of 16 characters when I was going to create a new password. I know we had a question about send. So you can choose to prevent your members from creating or editing sends. And you can also restrict users so that they have to show their email address. There is a toggle otherwise that will allow them to hide their email address from the recipient. So two options there to restrict send. Not
and
sure.
then, oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
There was two other questions around policies. One was around enforcing 2FA. No, that was just me. I just said we had touched on it later. How you can enforce 2FA on an account, as well as what 2FAs do we support, and then how do we potentially restrict access to a user's personal vault if need be. So.
Yeah, so for two-step login, we have two options. So depending on if you are implementing single sign-on or not, if you choose to implement single sign-on, we would recommend that you implement 2FA through that identity provider. So through your Google Workspace, through your Azure Active Directory, things like that, because then you'll have much greater control over that second factor authentication. If you don't have that in place or don't plan on enabling that, within our policies, you can take advantage of the two-step login that is native to Bitwarden, but then you'll want to make sure that when your users are going into their account settings and getting that set up, to make sure that they are making sure they save that recovery code, and also they can set up multiple providers here. So they can set up an authenticator app and email, or multiple here, just in case they were to lose that second, that 2FA device. They're never going to get locked out of their account. So just something to keep in mind if you're going to choose to use that native Bitwarden 2FA. Let me pop back here. So you had mentioned, John, I believe, also being able to restrict that that individual vault. So you can remove the individual vault entirely. So those individual vaults, if you allow them, they are not going to be accessible by your admins by default, only really in the case of an account takeover. But you can choose to remove the individual vaults entirely. And a solution we've seen in that case is that we've seen companies implement a collection structure like this here down at the bottom, where each employee will have their own collection, in which case that will only be available to that user, but it'll also be able to be managed by the admins and owners of that organization. So there are some workarounds there.
And also, just to reiterate that as well, if they do use their personal families plan, that needs to be a separate email address than their than whatever they're signing up with. So just keep that in mind, that that's going to be a natural hindrance as well for them to blur those lines. So
yeah, absolutely. See, we had a few other questions in the chat. So Rob asked, is there a file size limit on send? So yes, you're limited to 500 meg on any of the desktop clients, or 100 by mobile. Oh, I should have kept reading. John replied to that. And then Ben asked, what is the emergency access feature? So you may have seen that here in the account settings. So that is a function that is designed to allow someone to either view or take over your account. It's kind of a break glass feature. So this is separate from the master password reset process. But this basically says if someone does not decline that email, or stop someone from viewing or taking over their account, when this amount of time passes, they could get access into that account. From what we've seen with customers, this tends to be more of a family type situation as opposed to a business account. Most of the time, business accounts or business organizations will just take advantage of that master password reset to take over an account if needed.
yeah, this is something that I've used to get my parents on a password manager. So it's always handy to set yourself up when having family members hop on. That might not be as familiar with
Yes.
Bitwarden.
Definitely handy for family, like I said. All right. So hopping back over, were there any other policies that you wanted me to make sure to cover, John?
I do not. I'm not aware. I think that's everything that was requested.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
Okay, then I'll hop back in here. All right. So you can also, if you are the admin or the owner of your organization, just like an individual user can import, you can also import. So those same options will be available at the company or organization level. And you will be able to set up, but not only if you're coming from an import. So if you're importing from a previous solution, any file structure or folder structure rather that you had in that previous solution should come in as collections. But if you're creating new collections, you can also specify what that structure or nesting here looks like. So when I say nesting, I'm referring to this kind of tiered experience with these little carrots. So this is more of a UI feature. So to give your users an idea that, hey, these production logins are related to development and IT support, but maybe not related to the security training. You can set the permissions for each of these collections independent of one another. So whether it's a top level or a nested collection, you can specify who is getting access to that collection. Now, managing access into Bitwarden. So we already talked a little bit about single sign-on. So with Bitwarden, we support a wide variety of identity providers. So basically any any identity provider that either complies with SAML 2.0 or OIDC. So any of those can be put in place. And we also offer, kind of hand in hand with that, we also offer the ability to automatically provision your users or members as well as their group membership, either through skim provisioning, which can be done right here if you have an enterprise organization and an identity provider that's compatible, or through Directory Connector, which is an application that's installed on your local infrastructure. Let me backtrack just slightly here. With that single sign-on, we also have the ability to verify or claim your domain. So at bitwarden.com, at company.com, to associate that with this particular organization. So as your users go to sign in, they don't need to enter this SSO identifier. Bitwarden will recognize that they are an at company.com user and direct them to your single sign-on method. Now, within the UI, you can also not only import from other solutions, you can also export to back up your vaults. So users or members can export their individual vault data. Again, you can turn that off if you so choose. So restrict that with a policy. And your organization admins or owners can also export your organization vault data. You can do that as either plain text JSON or CSV, in which case you'd always want to make sure you're securing it some other way, or as an encrypted JSON file. So you can always back up that vault. You also can get granular into your role-based access control. So we have 4 pre-built roles as well as custom roles available for enterprise organizations, where you can mix and match between any of the available administrator or manager position or permissions rather. And then just like within your identity provider, you can set up those members into groups so that all of your permissions are going to be managed at scale. So who can get access to which collections does not need to be managed on a person-to-person basis, but it really allows for scaling. And you can also, with that skim provisioning or directory connector, sync that group membership across between your identity provider and Bitwarden, so that you only need to manage that membership in one place. That membership is going to be automatically adjusted or removed based on whatever changes you're making in that provider. And then lastly here, so in addition to the same Vault health reports like your users will have, you can also view event logs. So this is going to be kind of the big picture view of everything that's been going on in your organization. We will store the timestamp, the user, the client, as well as over 50 different event types. So everything from when those policies get changed by another admin, to autofilling, to viewing passwords. And you can view those either as the full bulk report and export that into an SIEM tool, or you can see them just by a particular item, so a sensitive login, or by a specific member. So maybe as part of like an offboarding process, you can take a look and see what changes have been made. All right, so that is the end of my main presentation for you guys. You see, Ben asked, what type of DNS record is used for domain verification? So that is going to be a DNS TXT record, and Bitwarden provides that for you.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of cool things that come with domain verification. We've just now implemented the feature, and the first implementation for it is going to be this SSO improvement, and there's going to be some really cool features coming from that too.
I also just threw a link to our Help Center documentation about that feature. So that's going to be a great place for lots of different resources.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Thank you in advance, Ben, or I guess thank you already for being so active in the chat. I appreciate having some interaction.
Oh, it looks like Clayton has a question.
Does it sync across multiple browsers like Google? So yes, Clayton. So as long as you're signed in with the same account, so Clayton@company.com, Bitwarden will sync all of your data across to each browser that you have installed. Or would you need to set up the extension on each account and each computer? So you'd still need to install the extension in whatever other computers that you wanted, but as soon as you signed in with that account, you'd have access to all the same information. And the self-hosted options. So let me grab that here. Ryan, can you speak to hosting without self-hosting without Docker?
Yeah, there is a way. Docker is the easiest way to do it. There's a couple other options too. DigitalOcean is one. We have a droplet available through that. But we also offer instructions on how to host a Linux instance. That's all available on our website, our Help Center. We call it the Help Center, but it really should just be called the Documentation Center because all the documentation is right there. And I would highly recommend checking that out. But yeah, you can do a Linux install that way. We actually have a great video that we did on Twitch. I think we posted that over to our YouTube page as well, where our integration engineers went and did that. So you get to watch all the fun little sudo this, sudo that, everything that goes into working Linux.
And looks like Clayton had a question about insurance or guarantee.
If your cards or passwords are compromised. So actually, that was a question I wanted to ask all of y'all. A product, cyber security insurance, is starting to become more common. And has anyone thought of that or used that at all? I know that we've seen some people who are doing cyber insurance get rate reductions if they enforce use of a password manager for their company. But I don't know if there's any certifications for that yet. It's relatively new.
Yeah, that's not something that we've started to implement, but we have heard about it. And it's very intriguing. Any other questions?
Sean did ask about password auditing really quick. That was a little higher up there. So yes, Sean, we do have event logs that are perpetual for the entire life of the organization and the life of the items that are there. So they do allow you to, see who's accessed and edited passwords that are shared within the organizational vault. Now, you won't be able to edit, say, a user's personal vault because that's the way our encryption model works. There's no way for admins to access that without the master password. But on that, if you want to ever audit a user, you can navigate on their user tab, find that user, and you can see what activities they have taken and get a more precise insight into how that user has been using Bitwarden. So we do offer that as well. Yeah.
I was thinking more auditing the quality of everybody's password. Now, I've been looking for something like a Bitwarden solution for what feels like forever. And one of the things I'm looking for is a way to say, this person has bad passwords. I don't want to know their passwords, but I want just like a out of 10 difficulty score. And I thought Bitwarden provided that. That's why I've been holding out for a self-hosted Bitwarden for so long.
So we do have Vault Health reports, and I just posted the link to our Help Center documentation on that. So right now, they are something that you'd have to run manually, but we are also working on a more dashboard-like view with a score like you're talking about, because it's definitely something that we've heard from a lot of our customers. But yes,
Perfect.
I'm not sure if that was during part that you stepped away for, but that will be able to identify any passwords that are either already breached or are not sufficiently strong. So you'll be able to see that on an item by item level. So not only just how is this one user doing, but down to, hey, this is the login that needs to get addressed.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Any final questions?